right, welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of our guests joining us from around the world, and to all of our Democrats Abroad members, and a special welcome to Chair Wikler. I'm Jennifer von Estorff. I'm our state team's global coordinator. I'm a Texas voter, and I live in Germany. And right now, we're joined with two of our team leads from the Wisconsinites Abroad team, Liz Blackburn and Annie Growell. And I am going to hand over to Liz to get us started.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Democrats Abroad. I'm Liz Blackburn, and together with Annie Grall, I chair Wisconsinites Abroad. You may remember me from such videos as Cheesehead at the convention, Cheesehead at the Madison rally, and Cheesehead randomly walking the streets of Asia Pacific telling you to vote. And yes, I'm wearing my Cheesehead today. But I'm here to tell you that you don't need a cheesehead to activate. Wherever you live, we need your voice and we need your vote. Here to tell you a little bit more about that is our fearless state party chair leader, Martha McDevitt Pugh. Martha advocates for the rights and interests of Americans living abroad. She understands that our global votes are the margin of victory in close elections. She leads with passion, strategic insight, and a clear vision for our future. Please give a warm Wisconsin welcome to Martha McDevitt Pugh.
Thank you so much, Annie, Jennifer, and Liz for organizing this meeting today. I'm really delighted that Chair Wikler is here with us. If you've been paying any attention to Wisconsin this year in 2024, you've heard the name Ben Wikler. Wikler is widely regarded as one of the most effective Democratic state party chairs in the nation. Ben Wikler has served as chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin since June 2019, helping to deliver a string of historic victories, including flipping Wisconsin for President Biden in 2020 and re-electing Governor Tony Evers in 2022 and electing a progressive Supreme Court justice in 2023. Flipping the majority on the court from conservative to progressive for the first time in 15 years. And if you've been with Democrats during any of those years, you've probably heard about this because we have brought our part to the game as well. At a recent WisDems fundraiser in Chicago, Ben explained that in addition to re-electing Tammy Baldwin, it is possible to flip 3 congressional districts from red to blue this November, the 1st, the 3rd, and the 8th. Prior to serving as chair, Ben served as the Washington, D.C. director and senior advisor for Move On, where he played a key leadership role in the successful battle to save the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid. Ben and his wife, Beth, now live in Madison with their 3 children and their enormous dog, Pumpkin. And since the road to the White House runs through Wisconsin, we Dems are very lucky that Ben is here today. With that, I'd like to hand over to Chair Ben Wikler of Wisconsin.
Thank you so much, Chair McDevitt Pugh. Martha, your leadership of Democrats Abroad makes such a difference across the country and to the entire world. Liz and Annie, thank you for leading Wisconsinites Abroad. As you know, there are more Wisconsinites registered abroad than the margin of victory in 4 of the last 6 presidential races here. All 4 of those 6 races have come down to less than 1 percentage point. The biggest margin out of those was 22,748 votes. There are 25,000 Wisconsinites abroad registered now, and there's many more who could register. So what you do is absolutely game-changing and critical. The number of Democrats, Wisconsinites abroad who voted in 2020, it was about 3/4 of the margin of victory. The margin was 20,682, and there were 15,000 voters abroad. That number was bigger than the margin of victory in 2004. So the work that everyone here does to mobilize Wisconsinites internationally could make the difference. And that's true across all 7 of the battleground states, that these are states that are likely to have razor-thin margins based on all the data and research right now. So everything you do could be the thing that determines the winner of the presidential race. Wisconsin is a state of small and medium-sized communities. We have Milwaukee, we have Madison, those are our biggest cities. They make up less than, the voters in the Madison and Milwaukee metropolitan areas make up only about 37%, well under half of the Democratic votes in the state, closer to 1/3. most of the Democratic votes come from smaller communities, and Democrats abroad, as a Wisconsinites abroad, in terms of the folks that are registered, they'd be in the middle of the pack of Wisconsin counties. It's a very meaningful part of our statewide path to victory. Based on the 2020 returns, if every Wisconsin registered Wisconsinite abroad voted, then Democrats abroad would be the 32nd biggest county in the state. And we only win when we organize everywhere. I don't see a path to victory unless everyone here does everything that they do. And I know that you will, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful for it. And Jennifer, thank you so much for your leadership of the state's team and for helping kick us off this morning. I'm so honored to join everybody today because we are in a hinge moment in the history of Wisconsin that will affect the history of democracy globally. You can sort of experience how history sometimes goes like this. It goes wide, there's all kinds of different things that could happen, and then it comes into a pinch point where, a few days, a little period of time, the next 44 days in this moment, determine everything that comes after. We're in one of those pinch points right now. We've experienced them before. In 2010, Wisconsin had one of those, and Republicans swept our state, flipped us from a blue to a red trifecta. And then they went about systematically smashing the pillars of democracy in Wisconsin, making Wisconsin the second hardest state to register to vote in America, making Wisconsin the state that had the biggest decline in union density in America this century, gerrymandering Wisconsin so brutally that even when Democrats won a majority the next year in 2012 in the state legislative races, Republicans grew their majority despite losing most of the votes and have sustained and grown their majorities ever since. All of that could have made Wisconsin a red state, and it didn't because Wisconsinites abroad and at home refused to give up, because people dug deep, because people recommitted themselves to the work to build a democracy where every person's voice could matter, where every person could be treated with respect. We've been organizing year round now. In some ways, ever since 2011, when the protests rose against Scott Walker and the Republicans, but in a very systematic, intensive way since 2017. We've been building a year-round, statewide, grassroots, friend-to-friend, neighbor-to-neighbor organizing program. And I was elected in June of 2019 as chair. I ran for chair because I loved that organizing program. My goal then was to add digital and virtual organizing, relational friend-to-friend organizing, communications to combat the Republicans and advance democratic ideals and candidates in every arena where voters might pay any attention. And we had to be totally virtual in 2020. We won a Supreme Court race that spring with your help. And then that fall, we defeated Trump by 0.6 of a percentage point, 2 or 3 votes per precinct across the state of Wisconsin. And then the election would have been overturned if we hadn't won the spring Supreme Court election. We had a single vote margin in the state Supreme Court, but we sustained that victory. In 2022, we had a governor's race that we were fated to lose. The last time a Democrat had won a governor's race with a Democratic president in the White House was 1962 by a single percentage point. 60 years later, we were able to defeat Donald Trump's handpicked candidate, re-elect Governor Evers, triple the governor's margin of victory from 2018. We got to 3.4 points, which is a true Wisconsin landslide. And at the same time, prevent Republicans from getting a supermajority in the legislature that could allow them to override the governor's veto. That second battle, that was incredibly frighteningly close. We won, we prevented the margin of veto override by 2,499 votes statewide. That's 1/10 of 1 percentage point of the votes cast in Wisconsin. If we hadn't won those votes, Republicans could have passed their laws to gut our electoral system and give them control over voting rights and voter access and election certification in a way that would be terrifying right now. But we won, and they did not get that power. Then there was one path left where Republicans could overturn the election, even if we won. And that was the state Supreme Court, which had been so frightening the time before. In 2020, the one conservative justice voted against Trump, and his given reason was that Trump waited till after he saw the election results in order to challenge before he started challenging the ballots and the rules. Well, that gave a pretty clear blueprint to Trump about what to do in 2024. File your lawsuit before the ballots are counted. So we could not count on defeating an attempt to overturn the election this time. We needed another seat. And in 2023, with your help again, with a massive mobilization across Wisconsin, across the country, supporting Wisconsinites, we were able to defeat the architect of Trump's fake elector scheme, Dan Kelly, the legal advisor to it, we were able to defeat one of the most anti-abortion extremists and elect someone who believes in democracy, who believes in bodily autonomy and freedom, Janet Protasewicz, to our Supreme Court and win a 4-3 progressive majority, all women, all people who believe in democracy and freedom and Constitution and the rule of law, to lead our state Supreme Court in Wisconsin. And because of that, and because we defeated and attempted a preemptive impeachment of Janet Protasewicz the next fall, because of all that, we now have an election where if we win, it'll stay won. So all we have to do is win. We have an election for the first time in a long time on fair maps. The state Supreme Court struck down the Republicans' obscene gerrymander, and we now have maps where if we win the majority of votes and a tiny bit more, we'll win the majority of state assembly seats, and we'll break the Republican supermajority in the state Senate. Now, on one hand, the math is amazing. If we win all the seats that were won by Biden voters in 2020, then we win 49 out of 50. And if we win just a little bit more than that, half a point more, then we can win 3 more seats and get up to 52 assembly seats out of 99, a straight up majority. On the other hand, we only have 35 seats right now. We need to flip 15 seats out of the 99 that are up in order to win a majority this year. That is a lot of seats where everything has to go right. So this is a huge battle, the likes of which we've never seen. There are 10 seats where Biden won or lost by less than 2 percentage points. Republicans at this moment, I'm telling you, and we're raising funds to try to change this, they're outspending us in 13 assembly races right now. They're up on cable ads. They're up flooding mail, sending out digital ads earlier than they ever have before because they recognize this is existential. They recognize that the battle for the assembly majority could determine voting rights, union organizing rights, public education, reproductive freedom, and so much else for generations to come. So we are in that fight. And in every region of Wisconsin, across the state, in every congressional district, there are state legislative races that are poised to flip if we all do our jobs right. And there are state Senate races. There are 4 seats that we have a chance to pick up. If we win those, then we have enormous leverage because the Republican caucus is so divided. I think we have a path to finally expand Medicaid in 2025, to legalize cannabis in 2025. Now, I recognize you don't live in Wisconsin, so those things won't affect you directly. The people that you love will be affected directly. And they create a path for Democrats to show what we can do. Now, the reality is Wisconsin should not be on a razor's edge all the time. That is what we are right now, but we shouldn't be because our voters want progress. They want us to live up to our state motto of forward. Part of the reason we're in this mess is that Republicans have made it so hard for people to cast ballots. We have one of the biggest racial voting gaps in the country, not because Black and Latino voters in Wisconsin don't want to vote. It's because Republicans put in one of the most restrictive voter ID laws in the country. We didn't have a gap like that before this law came in. And that law Republicans are trying to put into our state constitution. If they win the assembly majority this year, they'll be able to pass it through the state legislature for the second time, and it'll go to voters and probably wind up permanently encoded in our constitution. The same voter suppression law that pushed down turnout from young voters, Black and Latino voters, by such massive margins after it came into effect in 2015, that Trump won in 2016 and Ron Johnson won in 2022, both margins of victory directly attributable to the impact of that law. But if we win the assembly majority now, not only do we stop the march of that constitutional amendment, we create a path to actually making Wisconsin the most pro-voter state in the country, the most pro-worker state in the country, the most pro-student and teacher and public school state in the country. We have a chance for Wisconsin to build on the progressive tradition that had made it a great state in the first place. We're the state that declared the Fugitive Slave Act unconstitutional before the Civil War. We were on the Underground Railroad. We were the state that first ratified the 19th Amendment to women could vote. We were the state that passed the first statewide law for equal rights for women, the first state to pass a statewide law defending LGBTQ people against discrimination, the creators of Earth Day, the state that created workers' compensation and unemployment insurance. Wisconsinites wrote the Social Security Act and Medicare and Medicaid Act. Wisconsin is a state where we move forward and we show the country what is possible with effective, clean, responsive, progressive government. And as folks across the world, as Wisconsinites abroad and Americans abroad, you know what it means when the United States shows how to move forward, that we can create an example that can help move the rest of this planet. we have to do that through our example. We can't just do it through our words. And Wisconsin is the state that moves the country forward when we are at our best. And this election determines whether Wisconsin remains the petri dish for authoritarian schemes to stop the majority from having a say in the future affairs of the state, or if Wisconsin becomes a state that is a laboratory of democracy instead of autocracy and shows what's possible when we do the right thing. This election determines that. The state legislative elections will determine that. In the House, we have Rebecca Cook in the 3rd Congressional District, grew up on a dairy farm in Eau Claire, is waitressing tables while she runs for Congress, and a tough as nails fighter that Derek Van Orden, the Republican congressman who screams at teenagers in the U.S. Capitol, has been denounced by Mitch McConnell on the floor of the Senate for doing that. He is quaking in his boots facing this young woman who is taking the fight to him. And she's up in the most recent poll in the 3rd Congressional District. That's Western Wisconsin. In the 1st Congressional District, Peter Barca, who once represented that district before, who led Democrats in the state assembly during the Act 10 fight, he's running against Brian Stile, Paul Ryan's protege. And we have a fighting chance in that district. In the 8th Congressional District, which pundits don't think of as a flippable seat, Kristen Lyerly, a pro-choice OBGYN, is running against a Trumpist who's basically his only qualification is being endorsed by Donald Trump. And Kristen Lyerly is packing crowds into small town venues all over the 8th Congressional District in a way that is extraordinary and eye-popping. I'm going to be at her tailgate before the Packers game a week from today. So this is the week for me to join you because she is energizing people in a way that no one's seen in the 8th Congressional District for a long time. So the numbers tell one story, the energy on the ground tells another. That is a fight that we are engaged in and spending and organizing in, and keep an eye on that district. And then we've got Tammy Baldwin in the U.S. Senate race, and she is a dynamite champion. She's a fighter, and she's fighting against a Republican who grew up in Madison. I'll give him that. He's been living in California in a giant mansion where he runs a $3.2 billion bank. This is someone who, every time he opens his mouth, he somehow says something demeaning about Wisconsinites. He says that old people in nursing homes don't have the mental capacity to vote. He says women spend too much time thinking about Hollywood. Single mothers lack values and morals and ethics. That was his phrase. He said young people lack a work ethic. He said farmers should retire later because they're not really doing physical labor. They're just driving around on their tractors now. He said people who struggle with their weight should be forced to pay more for health insurance because there should be consequences for their decisions. And I could go on with that list, but don't take it from me. Just go to erichuvdydoesn'tlikeyou.com and you can find a whole bunch of his choicest quotes. It's a website we prepared just for the benefit of Wisconsin voters. Tammy Baldwin has to win that race, and she's ahead in that race, but we have to keep our feet on the gas. And then there's the presidential race. And I will tell you, there is an explosion of energy and joy in this fight like we've never seen. Certainly not since 2008. There's a wave of enthusiasm. There are 60,000 people who've signed up to volunteer since Harris became our nominee. There are people coming out of the woodwork, people who I was in Iowa County yesterday, and a woman told me that she had come up from Texas for the last 2 months of this election just to volunteer every single day. People are moving home. And Democrats abroad, you can engage people who may have been cynical about politics, who may have told you that they were done with American politics, who don't want to vote. This is the moment to talk to them about doing it. So in the presidential race, there are 3 public polls that have us 1 point ahead in the last 96 hours. Our most recent internal poll has us 2 points ahead. This is a pitched battle, and the margin could be small, but we could be the state that tips the entire country. So we need to do the work. Now, if we do this work, next year could be extraordinary. It could be one of those years, those hinge moments where in Wisconsin and nationally we start moving forward in a way that would be thrilling, starting with Tammy Baldwin's Women's Health Protection Act, the protections for reproductive freedom, passing the PRO Act to restore union organizing rights, passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancements Act to restore voting rights across the country, and the Freedom to Vote Act. And the United States could continue and build on leadership internationally rather than the nightmare scenario that Trump is envisioning. Terrifying stuff. All of that depends on what happens in these next 44 days. But for Democrats abroad, it depends on really what happens in the next week or so. Because Democrats abroad, you have your ballots now. And the other voters who've requested absentee ballots, they have them now. They're coming in over these next few days, this next week. And then you know better than anyone how long it takes for those ballots to reach the United States, to reach the clerks in Wisconsin. And this is not a situation where people can wait until the last second. So your GOTV time has begun. And I wanted to join today to say thank you. Thank you for doing the work. Every call you make, every step you take, I guess I'm singing a song almost. Uh, the world will be watching you. The world will care what you do. The voters that you mobilize to return ballots to the state of Wisconsin in this next week could absolutely tip the entire presidential election. And the window of time is small, and the ways that things could get messed up are many, and you have deep expertise in how to mobilize people to make sure those votes count. That could be the margin. And so for everything that you're doing right now and that you're about to do in this next week, I give you my profound, profound gratitude, because we have an opportunity to change the world, to make this world a better place and prevent a catastrophe, and to take the state that I love, the state where I'm joining you from the house now, where I grew up. The state of Wisconsin depends on your actions in this next week to 10 days, most of all. So for all of that, thank you so much. Let's go out there, let's fight, and let's win.
Thank you, Ben. That was amazing. I think we might have to take that song and make it our own. Thank you for the great quote. We have a few questions from around the world, and I believe we are kicking it off with Kristen, who's in the UK. Kristen, take it away.
Hi, Ben. It's Kristen Wolf, Chair of Democrats Abroad UK. First, fantastic. I had a chance briefly to meet you in Chicago, but I wanted you to know that our GOTB team registered over 250 Badgers when they got off the plane to make sure that those students were ready to go. So we're out here fighting for you. But question is around the citizenship voting requirement amendment. You mentioned it earlier, I believe, about trying to keep Latinos and others from voting. But there's a specific provision that we are deeply concerned about as Democrats abroad, in that the change in language appears to require that residents live in a particular county, as opposed to being what the current Constitution requires, which is residents of. And we are concerned that that may compromise our ability to vote under the UOCAVA Act, which is our federal law that protects overseas voters, military and civilian. Could you comment on that and whether the team there is looking at it and give us some reassurance that, you know, this isn't going to go haywire for us and it's going to result in long legal battles that are going to keep us from voting in the future?
Yeah, this is a great point, and thank you. So there's a slew of constitutional amendments we've been fighting, and the one I was referring to is an amendment that is halfway through the legislative process, which is to take Wisconsin's voter ID law and then put that into the Constitution. That is not yet on the ballot. That the one I referenced before has gone through one legislative session. It needs to be passed in back-to-back legislative sessions to reach voters in Wisconsin, and whether it gets a second passage through the legislature depends on what happens in the state legislative races this fall. So that is hopefully we defeat it by winning the assembly now, and we don't have to actually fight it in on the ballot in the future. The constitutional amendment that's on the ballot in Wisconsin this fall is a ridiculous amendment that is supposedly mainly focused on preventing non-citizen voting, but there is no non-citizen voting in Wisconsin right now. It defines it says that only citizens, I guess, living in Wisconsin who are over 18 can vote. And most of the conversation that Republicans are pushing is this idea that there are non-citizens voting in Wisconsin in huge numbers right now. It is manifestly false. It's been researched a billion times, and by law in Wisconsin, you have to be a citizen to be able to cast a ballot. So it is a trick, and we've endorsed against it, as have a slew of other different organizations, because it is just a Republican conspiracy theory pushing attack. Now, this question about residing in Wisconsin versus being registered in Wisconsin is critical and has not been part of the debate yet. So I think this is a really important point, and I'm going to, following this call, follow up with our legal team and see what we can establish about this, because I think that creates a good argument against it, which is that lots of Wisconsinites go away and come back, and they shouldn't be stripped of their rights. And B, it might be in violation of federal law, which, federal law supersedes attempts to amend a state constitution. So it could be conceivably invalidated on that basis or messed with on that basis, but it should be rejected in part on that basis. more immediately. And that, I think that's a really compelling argument. Certainly for everyone outside the United States, vote no on this amendment. It is preposterous. It does nothing to protect our democracy and in fact just undermines it by feeding Republican conspiracy theories. And this threat to Wisconsinites abroad is another dimension that I think it's worth pointing out. So I really appreciate you raising that, and I'm making a note so that we can take action on it as soon as I get back.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Super important to us out here.
Absolutely. Yeah. My mom was, as I think I've told you, was a Democrat abroad in London for a number of years when I was in college and after. So this is personal for me too.
Which is amazing. And we can't wait to have her on a call sometime too. Right now, we've got another question coming from Spain. Laura, unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hi. First, thank you so much for coming. Very much appreciate hearing I think the motivation of how amazing, if we see the future of the elections turning out the way we want to in November, how amazing next year can be. I think that that's something that really can help, especially after so many years, is kind of what you talked about from 2010 onwards of all the changes that have happened. And so the question that I had was, as you know, overseas Wisconsinites must return their ballots by postal mail. And in some countries, this is incredibly challenging, where they either don't have a postal system or the postal system is not as reliable. Or, for example, they have to use private courier systems, but private courier systems don't deliver to PO boxes. So any of the LEOs that use a PO box, and there's a lot of them, you can't return a ballot to. Can we count on the support of WisDems to help us reach elected officials so we can update the election law to the 21st century? I mean, especially, I work with international students, I work with like US students in Spain, I should say, international students for Spain. And I get to help them also register to vote, and seeing how they can return their ballot by email. It's one of those things that I can see other states are doing it. Is it something that we can count on the support of WisDem to help us to be able to return our ballots by email as well, for example?
So I'll be clear, we're not going to have a chance to change election laws until we have a Democratic trifecta here, because Republicans have rigged our election laws very intentionally to try to keep out voters that they don't want. That said, once we do have a Democratic trifecta, I think it's absolutely worth looking at what we can do to make it simpler for eligible Wisconsin voters to be able to vote from around the world. So I think I'm going to put this on my to-do list of things to do when we have a trifecta. And step one is to fight for that trifecta. I will say, especially the period, if we win the state assembly now, there's a very good chance that we win the 4 state Senate seats in this election cycle that open the door to being able to get the trifecta in 2026. So this year we win 4 seats. There are 2 additional seats that Biden won handily in the state Senate that are up in 2026. So if we win those 4, then we're probably getting a Senate majority in 2026, even if it's a fairly tough year for Democrats. And that means that during the next 2 years before, in the kind of 25, 26 period before the 2027 legislative season, we need to be developing all the legislation that we want to pass so we can move quickly the way that Minnesota did in the Minnesota Miracle and then the Michigan Miracle when they got their trifecta. We want a Wisconsin wonder right between Michigan and Minnesota that moves us into the 21st century, as you say. So this is a great note about one of the many things that we should do is to make sure that we make it easier for folks to vote from abroad.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Speaking of Minnesota, we've got an ally on the call right now. Timothy has a question for you all the way from Sweden. Timothy, go ahead.
Mute. Okay. All right. Can you hear me now? I guess. Okay. I was up by Lake Superior visiting family this summer, and I'm always amazed by the incredible natural resource of pristine, drinkable Lake Superior. And I'm also amazed by the natural resources of Wisconsin. And I'm horrified by the willingness of polluting industries and the Republicans to allow pollution of this incredible world-famous body of water. And we also are watching the constitutional amendments in the primary, which you had in Wisconsin, where the Republicans tried to get power over the funding for cleaning water, cleaning up the environment, combating climate change, to get power over that funding. the voters were alerted and said no. And what my question is, I just want you to talk about motivating environmental issues and the prospects in the November election. What's going to happen? Whom should they vote for in this upcoming election?
Well, Wisconsin is a state, it's the state of Aldo Leopold, it's the state of Gaylord Nelson and Earth Day. It's a state that has been historically been a massive leader in the environmental movement, where I remember joining other students in a walkout to protest mining in an area that could contaminate rivers in northern Wisconsin when I was at West High School. And then we had Scott Walker and Republicans ban the use of climate change anywhere in the Department of Natural Resources and put appointees on that stayed on after Governor Evers took office to block the Department of Natural Resources from doing its job. And then at the state and federal levels, there's this giant contrast between people like Toxic Tom Tiffany, the congressman from the 7th Congressional District, or Ron Johnson, who are total climate deniers who are a wrecking ball. Brad Schimmel, who is the Attorney General under Scott Walker, who was so devastatingly anti anything that would protect the environment. He's now running for state Supreme Court. He's up in 2025, and we have to defeat him. He would give the conservatives a majority on the state Supreme Court. And then we have, among the Democrats, pretty much universal support for significant progress, for switching to renewable and clean energy, for protecting our natural resources, our parks, our forests. Wisconsin's infrastructure, the park infrastructure, is actually the lowest rated part of our infrastructure, according to a big national study of infrastructure, because Republicans have refused to release funding to do the kind of maintenance and stewardship that our natural resources require. So this is an issue at every level of the ballot, from the state legislative level to the congressional to the Senate to certainly the presidential. And what's interesting is it used to be that there were more Republicans who were conscious about environmentalism and conservation, and there were some Democrats who were pretty bad on it. Now it's fully sorted in terms of partisanship. The Democrats at all levels are ready to do the right thing, and the Republicans at all levels are basically against it. So in terms of key races, it's just all the most flippable races are the most important ones. But it's now a party line question, and Wisconsin conservation voters is doing extraordinary work around the state to make sure voters know about these stakes, but there's so much more to be done. So really grateful for your question. And the answer is go fight the fights that we can, that our effort can tip the balance on. And there's a lot of them.
Thank you. That was amazing. I had no idea that parks were at the bottom of the pile. Great question, Timothy. Next, we're going to take it to another District 1 voter, my fellow friend, Wendy. Take it away.
Hey, Ben. Good morning. That I have in mind the subject of racism and immigration. And I'm actually in Chicago, so I've been going up to Kenosha to canvass fairly often. So my question is, Trump amplified the explosive, hateful, and false story about Haitians in Springfield. He and Vance are ignoring pleas to knock it off by the governor and local city officials. This sounds awfully familiar. Is this drama reopening old wounds for Kenosha? And can you address the feeling on the ground in District 1 since the debate, and give advice for those of us who are canvassing to handle this intelligently?
Yes, it is just so profoundly ugly and vicious what they're doing. And the city of Springfield is now basically shut down because of bomb threats and threats of violence, schools closing, public places closing. It reminds me of a panic that was attacked on a different dimension of identity, targeting Kiel, Wisconsin, a small town where school graduation was canceled, and school was closed completely because of a flood of bomb threats triggered, basically terrorist threats triggered by anti-trans attacks from national Republicans fed by people like Donald Trump. This kind of it frankly is terrorism that shuts down civic life in states around the country and communities around the country. It has no place in our politics, but it is part of what the MAGA movement is advancing at this moment. In the battle over immigration, Trump is doing the thing that demagogues in the United States and around the world have done so often, which is to provoke this fear of contamination that is so at odds with the fundamental idea of America as a nation that is a nation of, a melting pot of people from all over the world, from Native Americans, from people who came to the United States enslaved, and then everybody else is immigrants. So in Wisconsin, we know that there's strong support. There is a lot of public concern about fentanyl that Republicans have made into a panic about the southern border thing that is especially strong among Republicans. Uh, we also know that most Wisconsinites want a pathway to legal citizenship for immigrants. They want people to be treated fairly as human beings. And the position of Democrats up and down the ballot for years has been, let's invest to make sure we have an orderly and clear process at our border to be able to process asylum claims and be able to, to track what goods are coming across the border, and also work to make a path to a decent life and to citizenship for people that are here, and have a clear process for that. It's not a snap your fingers thing. But that has broad majority support. And so when you're talking to people who are fired up about this, you can say there was a bipartisan border deal that Donald Trump shot down, and that would have put many more border guards and many more judges to be able to figure out what's happening with people, so that that it's not the kind of chaos that Trump's inaction. He never passed any border legislation to help create. And then secondly, don't you think that if somebody's here working, paying taxes, undocumented folks have much lower crime rates than American citizens, and that's true of Haitians as well as the undocumented people across the country. If you're working hard and playing by the rules and paying taxes for years in this country, there should be a way that you can become a legal citizen if you aspire to be a proactive member of the community. That has enormous support, and most conservatives actually agree with that when you emphasize the kind of the values that make them proud to be American as well. And it's worth having that conversation. I will also say that sometimes if people start talking about this, they're actually in an unreachable place, and it's best to thank them for their time and move forward, because the level of kind of hate and fury and resentment that's been whipped up by the GOP around this is very intense, and it's often has deep dimensions of racism and xenophobia that aren't really about the humanity of the people involved. So there's a broad area of reasonable agreement, but sometimes the most intense emotion is coming from a place that has nothing to do with reason.
And do you think it's changed the race? And should we be going to Racine or Kenosha at this point as volunteers?
I mean, I would say both Racine and Kenosha, they are both in the first congressional district. They are both places where there's a lot of voters who we need to make sure turn out. And I think either one is great. Wherever is an easier place to be able to stay. There are races in both places that I think are really exciting. So I don't have a strong call between each, but our organizing team at any given moment has a sense of where we need extra capacity the most. And I think that I think this election is going to be tight. So I don't think that fundamental dynamic has changed.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have another question that just actually popped up in the chat, and I think it's a good one. I don't know if you saw it, but Kathy asks, her ballot still has Kennedy on it, but her understanding is that's being legislated this week. Is there a chance that new ballots would be issued? Would that delay it? Would we have to revote? Anything you can do to address this question would be amazing. Thank you.
The law is very clear. The only way, if you are a candidate who passes the eligibility requirements, put your name on the ballot, you're on the ballot unless you die. And once the ballots are sent out, you're still on the ballot even if you die. And Robert F. Kennedy, his campaign may be dead, but he's very much alive. So he is on the ballot. I think that is probably bad for Trump, because at this point, it's really just the kind of Trump-aligned people who are thinking about not voting for him. But who are thinking about voting for Robert F. Kennedy. But he made his decision when he ran for president here, and the law in Wisconsin is very plain. So my expectation is that the legal decision will follow the law in Wisconsin, and he's going to be the ballots that have been issued will be cast and counted, and there will be a lot more votes for RFK in Wisconsin than there will be in other states because of this. What he's done in this campaign has been so profoundly bad faith and such a ridiculous ploy to help Donald Trump. And now him, pulling out and endorsing Trump and trying to get off the ballot in order to help Trump. you don't get to mess around with our democracy that way. And so I would have every confidence that the ballot that you cast with the ballot in your hand will be counted appropriately.
Thank you, Ben. And thank you, Kathy, for that question. Thank you for sending your ballot from Toronto all the way to Wisconsin, Kenosha. Just like Wendy, we need your votes in District 1. We hope you vote for Barca. Check out our candidate page. We are putting links in the chat box right now. You can directly find all the information you need on candidates in District 1, District 3, District 8, across the map. We need your votes. We want you informed. Enter the conversation with us. And with that, we've got one more question for today, and that is from my esteemed colleague, Annie Grell. Annie from Spain, take it away.
Hi, Ben. Thank you so much for coming. I'm a District 8 voter. You can see the picture of my beloved Door County behind me. This year, Wisconsinites from abroad have flocked home to knock on doors in our home state. And based on feedback we've received from them, I have a question specifically about District 8 and our amazing candidate, Dr. Kristen Lyerly. Is the message getting through that reproductive freedom is just the tip of the spear of all of our freedoms? And is the significance of this issue becoming more clear to Northeastern Wisconsin voters, many of whom lean conservative? Will we succeed in electing the first OBGYN to Congress to represent us on this and other crucial issues? Thank you.
Well, I can say that we're going to try to succeed because she's such an amazing candidate. The energy is so good. And, this is an issue that will be on TV constantly in the presidential race, in the Senate race, in Dr. Lyerly's race, and in the state legislative races that are being contested. And there are many in the state Senate, Jamie Wall, and then multiple state assembly races in the 8th Congressional District. I think across the state and across the country, there's a really clear effort to make vivid the fact that the attacks on abortion are part of a broader set of attacks on IVF, on contraception, and on our freedom to make our own personal decisions about who we love and who we marry, about what we do behind closed doors, about the decisions we make in our personal lives, about the medical treatment we access, about how we take care of our families and decide when and whether to start a family, all these dimensions of our personal lives that should not be the government's business. And the vice president is a tremendous communicator about this. Dr. Lyerly is a tremendous communicator about this. And the broader frame of freedom now is being used on the campaign trail by Vice President Harris to also encompass the freedom to know your kids will come home safe from school, the freedom to retire with dignity after working and supporting your family, and the freedom to be part of forming a union. So the sense that access to reproductive freedom is the tip of the spear, I do think that message is being communicated, and in many cases is getting through. And also, there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, if you look at the way the district lines in the 8th are drawn, we're going to have to win a lot of conservative voters over to be able to do this. Now, this question of freedom is the most powerful persuasive message we have in our testing and polling. It's the one thing that, on climate change, if you think climate change is a crisis that we need to address, you're already a Democrat. But with reproductive freedom, if you think the government shouldn't be making your most personal, intimate decisions, it shouldn't be in your exam room, then you might be a Republican who's about to vote for a Democrat. It's not something where people are sorted in a neat way into the two parties, a tidy way. It is an issue that actually cuts across lines and also motivates non-voters to vote. So I think that, we saw in the Supreme Court race in 2023 in Wisconsin what the centrality of this issue could do in an election. It could really scramble the numbers that people thought they could expect. We could see the same thing this fall, and we're going to fight to make that happen because freedom should be non-negotiable in the United States of America. With that,
thank you, Ben.
I'm so grateful for the chance to join you.
Thank you so much. And before we close, I'm not sure if Pumpkin is around, but we've had questions pouring in from all over the world to see your famous puppy. And it's September, so it's pumpkin spice time. Bring her out.
Pumpkin. All right, let's see if we can get her over here. She might have gone up to snuggle my kids who are still asleep. Pumpkin.
That's amazing. Well, we do just want to say thank you for joining Wisconsinites. Oh, there she is.
The dog is unfortunately upstairs, and I don't want to
Okay.
be around, but I appreciate the invitation.
worries.
She's a very good dog.
Amazing. So you can follow Ben on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or any of the other places that exist to see the amazing pumpkin, as well as learn how you can help get out the vote. Oh, in Wisconsin from around the globe. Ben, thank you for joining Wisconsinites and all of our friends around the world. As a token of appreciation for you, we are sending you a Wisconsinites Abroad friendship bracelet. We hope you wear it often and continue to shout from the rooftops that wherever they live, Americans can vote. And for all of you out there who may not have your own friendship bracelet yet, Vote From Abroad shirt or Wisconsinites Abroad t-shirt yet, contact us. We'll get you set up with all of the merchandise, and we'll get Ben as much as he'll wear too. But first, you need to ensure that you have voted successfully in 2024. So Wisconsinites Abroad, stick with us. We have an entire voting guide just for you to make it easy, to make it simple, and to help you share it with voters in your area. So now I again turn the floor over to Annie Grawl. Let's go vote, Wisconsin. Let's get it.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks so much for coming, Ben. That was amazing. We had some more, I think we had some more questions come in at the end, and we don't have time to answer those, but if you can stick around at Wisconsin voters, we have a slide presentation to show you the ins and outs of requesting your ballot, returning your ballot. We can answer some questions, and we hope you'll share this information with other Wisconsinites so we can all get our votes counted. As you heard from Ben Wikler, it's going to be a really close election this year, and we need to get our ballots back. We need to get them counted. So Jennifer, can you start the slideshow? Thank you. Okay, so the UOCAVA law, Liz, feel free to jump in at any point. The UOCAVA law is the Uniform and Overseas Citizens Absentee Voting Act, and that is the federal law that protects our right to vote. I'm not going to read through it, but these are the protections that we have as overseas voters. And as Ben Wikler mentioned, federal law is above and beyond state law. So if state law disagrees, the federal law prevails. Next slide, please. So this is the form that we fill out as overseas voters. It's the federal postcard application, and you can access the website votefromabroad.org to begin filling out this form if you haven't done it yet. If you haven't done it yet, our time is running short because Wisconsin ballots must be returned by postal mail. So please fill this out today if you can and submit it online. And hopefully your ballot will be sent to you immediately upon receipt by your local clerk. Next slide, please. Here's how you fill out the form. When you get to the web page, votefromabroad.org, you just click on Start Here, and it will begin to load the form that you see on the screen. You fill out your information with your voting address, which is the address where you lived in Wisconsin, the last place you lived in Wisconsin, or whatever state you lived in. And it does not matter if that address is still a house, if it's still a house that your family members live in, that doesn't matter. It's just the last place where you lived. Make sure that you check the box that says you want to have your ballot sent by email. Next. As you go through the form, you will be asked about your classification, your category. Are you a civilian, intend to return uncertain, or never lived in the US? How you answer this question will determine what your ballot looks like. So for instance, in the ballots that are being sent out now, if you can vote down ballot, you will be able to vote on those constitutional amendment questions. If you only are voting in a federal election, you will not have that question on your ballot. Next slide, please. The wedding signature. So what you're going to have to do is take a blue pen or a black pen and a white piece of paper. You're going to sign your name, your signature on that piece of paper and take a picture of it with your computer, a camera, or with your phone and upload it onto the form. Do not use the fingertip signature option because clerks will not accept the fingertip signature. It has to be an ink signature. and your signature should match the signature that the state has on file for you from past elections, which means that you may have to, they may follow up with you if they don't think that that signature is correct. If you have any kind of questions, you should always contact your local clerk. You can contact us, you can contact the help desk, but the best and fastest way to get the correct answer, the clear answer, is by going straight back to Wisconsin and talking to your clerk. And then once you send in your FPCA, you should follow up, make sure that it was received and accepted. If you don't hear from your clerk, you'll be given an email address and a phone number, and you should follow up with them directly. So Wisconsin ballots should have been sent out on September 19th, which is 47 days. Federal law says 45 days, so Wisconsin sends a little bit before that. If you have not yet received your ballot and you have already submitted the ballot application, look in your junk mail folder, look in your promotions folders, look everywhere, because you should have it by now. This is a possible subject line. You can also check on the Wisconsin website to see if the ballot was sent to you. You may need to use a VPN to check the Wisconsin website. If you still have not received that ballot, follow up with your clerk or send an email to Vote From Abroad and see if we can get somebody to help you with following up on that. Once you get your ballot in your email, it will come as an email from your clerk with a PDF attachment, okay? The PDF attachment has several pages. Print the entire thing. If you don't have a color printer, you can print in black and white. That protection is afforded by the UOCAVA law. You must print the whole thing because you're going to have to read all of the instructions. You can print on paper of any size. That's another protection that we have from UOCAVA law. So don't go crazy. As long as everything fits on the printed page, it doesn't have to be 8.5 by 11 size. It just has to fit on the page that you have in your printer wherever you are. This is an important point. Make sure that in addition to the instruction form that is contained with the ballot, that you also read the email from your clerk. So this is the one that I got from my clerk from Sturgeon Bay. And step 4 is not in the official ballot instructions that came with my ballot, but my clerk wants me to write absentee voters ballot on the security envelope. So I had to read these instructions, the other instructions, and make sure that you do everything that at least one of those places has requested. Fill out your ballot with a blue or black pen, no red, no green, blue or black. Make sure that you vote all of the races that are on your ballot. Don't leave anything blank. It's really important to vote for every office. And also make sure that you read the ballot and make sure that your ballot has an initial from the clerk on the page. If there's no initial from the clerk, you need to go back to them and ask about that, because that's one thing that is also required by law. Fold up your ballot and put it in an envelope. I should have brought my props. An envelope, a letter-sized envelope, okay? That your ballot is inside the envelope and you seal it. If you vote in Sturgeon Bay, like myself, you're going to have to write absentee voters ballot on the outside of the envelope, or whatever your local clerk has asked in their instructions. This is the certificate, and this is going to be new to some Wisconsin voters because this is the first federal election, or the second, in which this certificate is included. It is brown. The brown certificate is for UOCAVA voters, but UOCAVA law says that we do not have to print in color. So if you print it up in black and white, shades of gray, it's still valid. You have to fill out the certificate. This is what verifies that the ballot comes from you. The ballot is inside the envelope and it's anonymous, but this certificate goes with it. Mine came with a sticker that covered the upper address field. If yours doesn't have a sticker from your clerk with that information already filled out, you have to fill it out by hand. Make sure your handwriting is legible And your signature in the signature field has to look like the signature on your FPCA. Put your date in US format, month, day, year. There's a section that says assistant that would only be filled out in the case that you need somebody to help you mark your ballot. For instance, if you have sight impairment or something like that. Otherwise, do not fill out that field. And then you need a witness. Also, as of just a few cycles ago, the witness no longer has to be a US citizen. It does have to be an adult over age 18. They have to sign, they have to write out their name, and they have to fill in their full address abroad. I just saw a question come through about this certificate, but I didn't read it. Can you tell me what it said, please, somebody?
Yeah, sorry, Annie, it's me. I'm just realizing, looking at the image, that my ballot certificate is not the same as the one you are showing in that. It's a different format, I think an older format. If we got an older format, or like it doesn't look like to be the correct format for the ballot certificate, would we need to follow up with our LEO to get the correct one? My LEO has occasionally sent inaccurate information, so I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, I would follow up. This is the one that was approved by WEC, I believe 2 years ago, right, Liz?
Oh.
Yeah, I would follow
Yeah,
up.
that's correct. In 2023, they issued this new guidance on colorful envelopes and these sort of forms you see in front of you. And that was because they thought it would be easier for postal service workers and ballot poll workers who are counting ballots to read. However, it is against federal law and it is not necessarily easier for us. Please email your local election officer, LEO, also known as municipal clerk. And let us know. If you want to CC us, that's great. wi@democratsabroad.org. I'm going to pop that in the chat. You can always CC us, and you can always email with these questions, voterhelp@votefromabroad.org. We will answer your questions. We've got Wisconsinites on there, and we need more on there answering these emails. If you can volunteer, please do that. But we're going to get this straightened away. We're going to help you in any way we can. That's a great question, Laura. And if you can put it in the chat box, if you have your ballot and it looks different, let us know. Let's see if we have an issue here.
Okay, let's keep going with the next slide. I'm sorry, my dog is unhappy. I hope you can't hear him. Okay, so you take the certificate and you stick it on the outside of your envelope. And then you take another envelope that is slightly larger than or larger than the letter envelope with your ballot in it. That's called the carrier envelope. And that's where you address your ballot to your clerk. Your clerk will also have provided an address to which you have to send your ballot. Put the certificate wrapped security envelope inside the carrier envelope, address it, put the proper postage on it, and put it in the mail as soon as possible. All right, our ballots have to be back to Wisconsin by 8 p.m. on election day. And depending on where you live, I know that is difficult because postal services are not reliable in all countries. If your clerk sent a template for an envelope, you can also print those up and make an envelope out of it, taping or gluing the edges and putting your ballot inside. There are also postage paid envelopes that you can probably get from your local Democrats Abroad chapter or from the consulate or the embassy near you. But those are only good for US postage, and they have to be mailed at the consulate in the diplomatic pouch. Okay, so if you're using your local postal service, make sure that you get the right postage, and don't use registered mail that requires a signature, because many clerks will not sign for packages arriving or for envelopes arriving. If you use the diplomatic pouch, you drop your ballot off at the closest embassy or consulate. It is free. They will take, with the postage paid envelope, like you can see in the image, they will put that in the diplomatic pouch. They will fly it across to the US, and they will put it into US Postal Service. Sounds great, but it takes time. We think it will take about 20 days approximately from Spain. And I know that every other country is different. So you have to check with your local DA chapter to see what the timing is that they recommend that you get your letters into the diplomatic pouch if you want to use that option. There's also the option of courier services like FedEx or DHL, which are more expensive, they're faster, and you can track. So you have to make your own decision. Family members can share a courier envelope. So for instance, my son and I can send our ballots back together in the same FedEx envelope. But if I wanted to send it with a friend who also votes in Wisconsin, but it doesn't live in my house, that would not be allowed. It'd have to be family members. And then again, we have the Wisconsin website, myvote.wi.gov. You can track your ballot and see when it arrives. Probably need a VPN, or you may need a VPN to see that site. And also the clerks do not necessarily update that information immediately. So if it gets closer to ballot to voting day, November 5th, and you see that your ballot has not arrived, you can always contact your clerk and ask them if they've gotten it. The federal write-in absentee ballot. Liz, I'd like you to cover this part. This is another option that we have.
Sure thing. So this is your FWAB, your FWAB, your FWAB, your backup ballot, your blank ballot. Oh my God, what is this ballot? This is crazy. So if you use that link in the chat box, you will see our amazing guide to how to FWAB, however you say it. This is super important. If you don't think your ballot's going to arrive on time, if you made a mistake, if your ballot doesn't arrive on time because you've just registered, you're registering this week, send in the backup ballot. Use that link right there to figure out how. The actual link I'll put in the chat in a minute, excuse me, is how to access that FWAB. It's on your screen right now, fap.gov/FWAB-privacy-notice. And it will have you fill out all of the information for Wisconsin. It will produce a FWAB and you will vote that FWAB. And it is blank, so you have to write presidential election and Kamala Harris. Then you have to write District 8, Kristen Lyerly. And you have to write constitutional amendment. And what are we voting on that? How are we voting on that? Annie, remind us.
Vote no.
We're voting no. That's
No.
right. We are voting that down. So use that FWAB. We will also get on a call with you anytime if you have questions, because that FWAB is confusing and voters do need help with it. You, me, everyone on this call, and everyone around the world. If you do get your ballot later, go ahead and submit that to whatever reaches your local election official, or what we call them in Wisconsin are municipal clerks. They will just count one of them. They won't count both. Don't worry about that. If there are specific FWAB questions, no worries. You can find us in our Signal Troop group, or you can email us wi@democratsabroad.org, and we're happy to jump on the call. Also, if you go to votefromabroad.org, and you vote right to the top, there's a little Zoom the vote link, and you can see when we have sessions. I believe we have some today, and you can get an amazing voter assistant from Canada, from France, from India on the phone with you, whatever time, day or night, if you make an appointment too. This is a great link. Go to votefromabroad.org, look at the top, we've got Zoom assistance for you. But the FWAB, not as hard as you think. We'll go over together, use our guide, click through. If you think it needs an update, if you think that there's maybe a better way to say something, let us know. We want to hear it. And if you want to walk through and make a video for us, oh my gosh, we would love that. Connect with us. We'll do it together. We got this. And the same, I think, Annie, you're muted right now. But we've got all of our resources here. Take it away.
Sorry. So if you have to fill out the FWAB by hand, you're going to need to research who's on the ballot, who would be on the ballot if it were a printed ballot. You can also learn about the candidates that are on your actual printed ballot that comes to your door, to your email inbox. These are some resources that we can recommend. There are others. Vote 411 is produced by the League of Women Voters. The Blue Voter Guide is quite good. And if you have any questions, you can also check our candidate guide on our state webpage. And here are the emails for any assistance that you might need. So to summarize, request your ballot today if you have not done that, and tell your friends, especially those who vote in the very important state of Wisconsin, to do the same. Volunteer with Democrats Abroad and with Wisconsinites Abroad. Reach out to us. Join our group. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. And make a donation to help us with phone banking, to help us with outreach, to help us with all of the computer systems that support this global initiative that we're all involved in, and that is here to support you. Thank you.
We have this video and we have more for you. We are on X, we are on Facebook, we are posting from our individual Instagram accounts and every single place that we can. We're putting some on YouTube. So follow us, find us. We'll send you the video. We'll put it in Signal today and we'll get that out there. But that was the amazing Vice President, future President of these United States of America, Kamala Harris, speaking in Madison on Friday and telling us that when we fight, we win. When we vote, we win. And we're going to do this together.
And join us next weekend at our next Wisconsinites Abroad working meeting on the 29th of September. The link is in the chat box. Thanks, everybody.
I'm so excited.
Please ask your questions.
Brilliant presentation, ladies. It was fantastic. Thank you so much for doing it. And thank you for all you're actually doing to help on ground back in Wisconsin. You guys are awesome. So well done. And thank you on behalf of all of us out here.